I've been in Nevada for over 20 years. I've worked for Citizen Alert for a number of years on nuclear issues, and since 2006 I've been with Great Basin Resource Watch. And I'm going to try to wrap up here a little bit with some of the things we come up against with a particular case that we've been dealing with in the courts for 3 years. Joe mentioned earlier, it's the Mount Denabo case. Great Basin Mine Watch and the Great Basin Resource Watch has never opposed a mine outright except for this one. To us, the issues were so pertinent and so poignant around the cultural uses of the land that we thought this is where a mine should not be. And the 1872 mining law has been brought up a few times, and that is one of the problems that we face with in dealing with trying to control some of the impacts from mining is the 1872 mining law. It makes it very difficult to stop a mine, but it also makes it very difficult to control its impacts. This is the area that we're talking about. This is Mount Denabo, around 2002, and here's 2008. So there was some historical mining that existed here prior to that time, but it was old, 100 years ago. So what's happened since has been much more dramatic. To kind of give you a location, you can sort of see this is sort of washed out. You can see it's central Nevada. Crescent Valley is where the project is. There's also a very large mine in the valley there. It's called the pipeline mine that Tom referred to earlier, and has used a lot of water, a lot of dewatering. Well, they're also going to be doing the water and pumping at this site as well. This is actually 2009. You can see things are progressing. We first challenged this mine in 2008, and we went to court. And Barrick Gold Corporation, one of the wealthiest gold companies in the world, was able to begin to move and process the mine while we were going through the legal process. So the legal process is out there, but they were so wealthy they could start acting on it very quickly while we were waiting to see if we were getting judges to rule on this and that and the other thing. This is one of the problems we come up against in trying to control the site. Joe could speak better to this, but generally our understanding was the whole area around Mount Denabo was a culturally significant area of the West Shoshone people. It goes back many creation stories. The list goes on and on. When we first heard testimony in court on this issue, I just realized, wow, I'm glad we challenged this, because it was so striking to me, the experiences of the culture and the West Shoshone people there, that I thought, yeah, we should definitely challenge this mine. This is a more current picture. It's May 2011. It's sort of bleached out, so it's kind of hard to tell, but this is the open pit developing, and they're actually processing there. What we have been able to do at this site is we have been able to slow down some of the pumping of groundwater, and this is one of the issues that we come up against. Is the 1872 mining law. This is actually in the EIS, the Environmental Impact Statement for Cortez. This is their need statement. 2 paragraphs. That's it. That is it. And it's mostly about how the project is going to make money. And we have to think about who really benefits, and where the impacts fall. This deposit was projected to have 7 million ounces of gold when it was proposed. They probably will find more there. So Barrick was very interested in pursuing this very aggressively. It's a very difficult case, but the issues are extremely right. So that's one of the reasons why we pursued it. Here's the language in the 1872 mining law that gets us stuck every time. Congress declares federal policy, national interest to foster and encourage private enterprise, so forth. The government agencies then interpret this, BLM interprets this as saying that this is really one of the best ways, if not the best way, to use public lands. This is a federal issue, so this is one of the problems in coming and trying to propose even mitigation or strategies to lessen the impacts that all the folks here have been talking about, which is one reason why it's very important for us to look to how we can affect things on a state level. This is very slow to change. There are legislation that gets introduced periodically. We can support that, but it's a difficult process to get some of this language changed. We thought, you would think, that Native American Religious Freedom Act would protect us here, but it hasn't. Again, the courts have not ruled favorably in this area. It turns out that the courts have narrowly interpreted this, that if the project is not forcing someone to do something against their religion, then it's not in violation. And that was a ruling with the San Francisco Peaks case in Arizona, not a mining issue, but it really stymied, unfortunately, the U.S. Supreme Court would not accept the case when it was appealed past the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. They rejected it. And so we're kind of legally stuck with some of these rulings. So we're up against some pretty difficult situation in terms of some of the federal language. However, we're currently arguing using the Federal Land Management Policy Act, which has this statement in it, that the project is not supposed to cause unnecessary and undue degradation to land, including cultural uses. That's our current argument in court now. We were, on October 6th, we were back in court again, arguing that BLM has not fulfilled this in regard to the groundwater, the pumping of groundwater at the site. It was determined by their own, contractors that many of the springs would go dry, and one which is particularly significant to people in the area, one that's called Shoshone Wells, would go dry and would not recover for 200 years. And that's as far as they did the calculation. So we're currently trying to get success on this particular issue here. But again, it comes back to the fact that it's difficult with some of the federal policies which are going to be slow to change. Some of the things that we can do in state is this issue of waters of the state that Tom mentioned. Basically, pit lake water that we were talking about should be waters of the state according to this definition. We asked DEP in challenging a permit recently that because according to the analysis, that pit lake would become degraded water. And we said, well, how come you're letting this happen? They told us basically there's no standard for pit lakes. No standard. They kind of come up with their own sort of this gray area. So one thing that we can do is begin to press on some of these some of our own state laws to help and protect us. Another one is this one, is that bodies of water as a result of mining pits, if it has the potential to degrade groundwater to the state, then it's illegal. And this is the issue of whether the degraded water in the pit will flow into the groundwater. They always make the argument that it doesn't because of evaporation. But we don't necessarily agree with that. And again, we were challenging the same permit, saying because there was evidence that this might happen. And we asked the question, what's the cutoff for potential? When is the potential? When is the probability too small that you don't have to that you're not going to be degrading water to the state of groundwater? No good answer back on that one. So another gray area that we can improve that will help us to protect some of the resources that we have. So there are some state issues I think that we can raise. It's very important. It's accountability, it's taxes, it's environmental impact, it's how it affects the community. And in many ways, we also should, I think another thing to think about is how can we help rural communities develop sustainable economies? A lot of them go through this boom and bust sort of problem with mining, and we'll continue to see that. So I just want to close with one last picture of a Lone Tree Pit Lake, a little bit uglier picture than Glenn showed. This was in 2009 when the acidity of this lake was like stomach acid. That's how bad it got. And this lake was predicted to not have that happen. So it's another reason why we want to clarify our state laws and say, well, hey, the uncertainty's big. We don't know how these things are going to behave in time. So we have to err on the conservative side. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say for now. Thank you very much. And thank you very much.